This episode is sponsored by Friskies, who would like to tell your cats hi. Now, if that didn't get your cat's attention, there is one thing that always does the trick. Just pour some Friskies crunchy food in the bowl and you'll hear those paws come running. Works every time. With so many Friskies choices, you can always bring your cats running from their secret napping spots. There's always more to explore. See for yourself at friskies.com or visit your local store.
How do you top your love for your cat? With a cascade of decadent savory gravy over a mouth-watering mousse pâté. Fancy Feast gems. 2 gourmet pâtés in one convenient pack. Simply peel and plate to reveal a pyramid shape that makes eating delightful and pamper her with an experience as extraordinary as she is. Turn the everyday into the extraordinary with Fancy Feast gems.
The McDonald's snack wrap is back. You brought it back. Ranch snack wrap. Spicy snack wrap. You broke the internet for a snack. Snack wrap is back. Ba-da-ba-ba-ba.
Welcome to the New Books Network.
I'm Chris Holmes, and this is Burned by Books. Here you'll find interviews with writers you already love, like Jennifer Egan and Rebecca Mackay, mixed in with up-and-coming voices like Alexandra Kleeman and Rumaan Alam. You'll find us wherever you listen to podcasts, but check out previous episodes at burnedbybooks.com and on Instagram and Twitter at burnedbybooks. Let's start the show. In C. Michelle Lindley's mesmerizing and lyrical debut, The Nude, the nude in question is a classical Greek sculpture that has been netted by a fisherman off the coast of a Greek isle. When Elizabeth Clarke, art historian and acquisitions specialist, is sent in to attempt to acquire the piece for a large and powerful American museum, it sets in motion a chain reaction that will put into relief exactly the costs and sacrifices made to purchase and keep an artwork beyond the bounds of its place of origin. Elizabeth will be drawn into the ken of a charismatic couple, Nico and Theo, a translator and photographer couple who have their own artistic intentions. Pulled into the atmosphere of this dynamic couple, a space of erotic and intellectual charge, Elizabeth must grapple with her relationship to her body, itself a figure that is gazed upon, perceived, and critiqued and altered by prescription pills, while trying to understand her connection to a sculpture that seems to call out to her from its historical moment. At times afflicted by a temporary blindness and disorientation, Elizabeth also has the power to cut through the obscuring layers of culture, economics, and language that change the meaning and value of this work of art that so many are desperate to acquire. Written with an exquisite poetic eye for description of place and sensation, C. Michelle Lindley has drawn a portrait of Hellenic beauty that relishes in scenes of food and sensuality, while carrying its narrative through with a force of plot tension and intrigue. It is a remarkable debut that announces a writer of beautiful and serious literary fiction. C. Michelle Lindley's work can be found in Conjunctions, the Georgia Review, and elsewhere. She is a National Endowment for the Arts Fellow for 2024 and has an MFA in Creative Writing from Cornell University and a BA in English and Art History from the University of California at Berkeley. And most recently, she is the recipient of the Freund Prize for Exceptional Creative Writing. Welcome to Burned by Books, Courtney.
Thank you so much for having me and for that really generous intro.
I am so excited to talk about this book. I have been telling everybody that I know. It's the beginning of the semester here at Ithaca College, and I've been telling all my colleagues that they need to grab the Nude and jump into it, although they're mad because they have to read other things and they don't like when I tell them about great books at the beginning of the semester. So sorry, not sorry. But I wanted to start with the idea of Greek antiquities and their acquisition. You clearly have a knowledge about the periods of art history in question here. You have an undergraduate degree in art history. And through Elizabeth, you show a real familiarity with sculpture and the terminology of study and appreciation of these kinds of arts. What kind of research did you do to bring this knowledge into the novel, and how did it help illuminate some of the things that you were hoping to really bring into the fiction?
Yeah, thank you. It was quite a bit of research, I will say. I
It feels that way.
I was first intrigued by this curator from the early aughts. Her name is Marion True. I have to, I think, be a little careful when I talk about her in a legal sense. I think the charges against her have since been dropped.
Mm.
But she got into some hot water with some acquisitions back in the late 90s, early aughts. So I started researching her. And then I was led to this book. It's called Chasing Aphrodite. It came out a bit ago. I think around that same time as well, like shortly after her case was made more public. And that was incredibly helpful. I also consulted a few art historians who actually, one such professor from Cornell while I was there, and she gave me the contact of another art historian who specialized exactly in antiquity, the purchasing and selling of antiquities. And he was able to sort of make sure that some of the questions I had were answered and that I was about it in a way that would make sense. And that was as accurate as it possibly could be for a fiction project.
Did you discover any things that in this research that you felt like just kind of told you an entirely different story about what the process of acquisitions were like, or was it sort of what you had expected going into it?
I knew very little going into it. So finding Marion True was probably the key to that. And also assessing that she was sort of the lone woman who took the fall for a lot of what the higher ups and the men around her were also doing.
How shocking.
Yes. Never heard that story before. Not to say that she was completely, I guess, yeah, I'm worried about the legal ramifications. There was, there's a real dark-sidedness to this process, which was not surprising. But I suppose the lawlessness of it was a little bit surprising. And I believe even still, the book is set in 99. So it was over 25 years ago. But I think researching that helped me realize how we got to how we are, or how we got to where we are now.
Yeah, it seems to me anyway, whenever I read something, in the New Yorker or whatever about a controversy about acquisitions, it seems a little bit like the Wild West, like just sort of like go out and grab whatever you can and use whatever levers of power you can to try and, get a wedge on it before other people. It's always shocking, especially because when we're in a museum space, it's so sort of tranquil and it feels very controlled and structured, but the acquisition itself feels like manic.
Yeah, that's a really wonderful point, that chasm between how it feels to be in a museum once you see the clean, the sanitized object, and how it actually got there, which is full of just under the table deals. And yeah, like I said, an underbelly of darkness sort of going on between all of it. Yeah.
So Elizabeth is afflicted with bouts of temporary blindness for which she heavily self-medicates. There's something profound in the idea of a woman whose livelihood and intellectual life depends on seeing things clearly and being able to evaluate them, losing her sight. Is it important that she is on the precipice of losing that ability? And can you talk a little bit about the power of blindness in the novel?
Yes. I believe that she's a character who, each character in this book, I believe, has their own blind spots and their own myopia. Elizabeth maybe being one of the worst contenders. Her migraine affliction is partially based off of some of my own struggles with migraine. I don't have a degree she does, to the point where it would cause blindness. A pretty rare symptom of a migraine. It is rare, but it does happen, and I have seen the oral spots that she speaks of. I think the idea
I've heard of friends having those kinds of like Yeah, those floating spots.
Yeah, and it's a scary experience. I think the idea of literalizing her blind spot was interesting to me, even though on paper it sounds pretty dramatic. And I also thought the tension of, as you said, a woman who's really built a life off of being able to see clearly, what would happen if the threat of that was always at her periphery, and how would she sort of respond to the pressures around her and
Mhm.
the oncoming, incoming, looming threat.
And it's I find headaches particularly interesting, outside of literature, but also in literature, because of this way in which they kind of remind us that our like intangibles of our thinking and intellect are rooted in tangible physical things. Because it's easy to kind of forget that and to think about our imaginings and thinking as themselves kind of other than our body. And this is a book that's so much about like remembering that you're in your body. And so I found that like reminder for Elizabeth quite powerful. Were you thinking about the ways in which she's reminded that her sight and intellect is rooted in a body that can fail her?
Yes, I was thinking about that a lot, as well as this sort of disconnect of the psychological and the physiological.
Mm,
And not
mhm.
not only the disconnect, but the overlap too for her as well. In many ways, she seems so disembodied and so cerebral and so outside of it. And I think as you were saying, she's sort of getting pulled back into it kind of constantly. She as if it's done without her choice, I suppose.
Nico and Theo are such an intriguing couple, and they're so magnetic and fascinating, and they clearly just have this sort of like blinding charisma. And Elizabeth sort of begins her interaction with them in what we might think of as a kind of recognizable way with Nico, where there's maybe the beginnings of some attraction there. But then suddenly his wife, Theo, is on the scene, and she is this whole other kind of sensual being. And it breaks up a little bit of our expectations about how desire is going to work in the novel, and how desire is mobile and kind of moves and is fluid and sometimes gets fixed on something like our sight, but then can move again. And I wonder how Nico and Theo came to you as this idea for a kind of couple that would help you examine the way in which desire is this mobile, powerful thing for Elizabeth.
Yes, I love the idea of desire as being mobile. Nico came to me first and Theo pretty quickly thereafter. And once I had Theo, I sort of felt like I could see that dynamic through, and it kept pulling at the threads of what I was trying to get at. A lot of ways there's maybe obvious connections between the statue and Theo, but I think anytime I tried to make those, I wanted to also push back on them and just sort of have these threads always reaching for each other, but never quite being able to touch.
Hmm.
So, but thinking in desire and the way that it sort of think both surprises and maybe doesn't surprise Elizabeth to be so interested in Theo. I wondered if early on she was interested because of Theo's outwardly beauty and the way that it sort of mimicked the beauty that she'd been taught to absorb and adore.
Mm, mhm.
And then I think I was interested in if it could become something more than that.
And I love the description of the nude photograph of Theo, and the way in which you describe a neutral, is it a neutral gaze? Is that how you describe it? Or neutral camera angle? Is
Yes,
that right?
yes,
And how that removes the shame of the nudity and allows a different kind of admiration of it that's not like looking at those things she was trained to love and adore.
yes. I was thinking, obviously, consciously of the idea of the gaze and the male gaze and sort of the binaries. And I wanted to consider alternate ways to get there that was sort of outside of male gaze versus not male gaze and what sort of a different path would look like. And like in that particular scene, it's filtered through two lenses, right? It's like Theo's lens and Elizabeth's lens. So it's that looking upon looking upon looking. And I just found that really fast to try to witness.
Yeah, what's that term in French that's it's big in literary theory? Is it mise en abîme? The kind
Oh,
of endless labyrinthine looking.
yes, yes.
Finding a new job is stressful. But with Indeed, it doesn't have to be. Just fill out your Indeed profile with your skills, experience, and desired salary. The more you fill out, the better your matches will be. And hearing from hiring managers will be 2 times more likely. Relax. That's your Indeed profile sending opportunities your way. Indeed, the world can work better.
What does every USAA member have in common? Family. We're one big family who supports the military community and their eligible families. And if you, your parent, or spouse served, you could join our family and save big on auto insurance. Visit USAA.com/join today to check your eligibility. Membership eligibility and product restrictions apply and are subject to change. USAA means United Services Automobile Association and its affiliates, San Antonio, Texas.
I think that works really well for what you're doing there with all the layered gazing.
Thank you. I'm glad.
I don't want to overstep by calling your style maximalist because there's nothing ostentatious about it. But you're not afraid of vividly drawn poetic imagery. And you seem to want to bring adjectives back in style, which have been on the since the beginning of the program era, I think. Do you see your style as at all against the grain of popular contemporary fiction? And do you understand your work as engaging differently with the poetic?
I love that question. Thank you. I think Elizabeth's voice was the most challenging thing to get right because I knew that she wanted to be seen a certain way. And I knew that she always sort of wanted to prove herself and her worth. So the way in which she not only sees them, but then describes them back had to be a little ostentatious and a little maximalist and even a little pretentious, which I don't think, there's a percentage of readers who really won't love that. But it really, it really made sense to me that this is how she would try to describe the world, and this would be her lens. And to do anything outside of that, I just don't think would have fit with the character I was trying to portray.
Yeah, I love that you've given the style over to her perspective, which I think is amazing. But I also just like the style. I like Elizabeth's sensibilities, I guess, and her willingness to give more language to something and not feel like she has to spare herself or others a sense of language's beauty. So I love that they're paired up in that way. I mean, you give her and you give the novel Greece as kind of like pure id for poetic description. I mean, you've got the food, and there's so many great food scenes in here. You've got the sun-drenched landscape. You have like beautiful naked bodies. And so I wonder if, Greece had a particular pull to you and how its sort of id-like beauty helped you think through Elizabeth.
Yes, definitely. Once I had this sort of image of a sculpture coming up from the water, I knew that it was probably going to be Mediterranean, and Greece seemed like the correct place. It sort of just fell in line in a pretty easy way. Place is incredibly important to me, and getting all of those sensual details in there also is incredibly important to me. I love to read that stuff, and I wanted to write something in that vein. I also wanted to push a little bit back against this sort of American abroad trope, and sort of
You
question
didn't
it.
want her to get her groove back in Greece?
I think she might have.
Yeah,
Yeah.
she might.
Yes. I know. I mean, yeah, that's it. We have this sort of monolithic understanding of what Greece looks like. And I wanted to just show its depth. I think some of that comes from my experience traveling abroad and seeing just how superficial people's taking in of a place can be, and just wanting to give something a little bit different. Maybe that's where that maximalist does sort of come into play, not wanting to leave any stone unturned, I suppose. Really paint more of a vivid portrait. Yeah.
Your description of eating and food is really wonderful and lush, even when it's terrifying. But is that something that you have done before and feel comfortable with? Was this a new kind of adventure with this? Because you're very good at it.
Oh, thank you. I love reading about food. I think some of that probably comes from a disordered part of me. And I think that's true for her too. Perhaps this
Yes, yeah.
being in this setting sort of opens portals in many ways, one of which is this hunger and sort of desire to fill herself up more than she would elsewhere. So I think I just relished in the ability to really get into the weed of the food and really make it sound both appetizing and then, as you put it out, at times can veer into grotesque.
Yeah, I wanted to talk about a moment of that grotesquerie, which is, thinking about living in and with the body. I found myself increasingly fixated on Elizabeth's sense that she was being infested with things, both real and imagined. At one point, she devours some gorgeous figs and finds a living insect in one that sends her mind back to what we believe is a hallucination of a painting infested with maggots. This kind of colonization of the body by foreign bodies does such good work as aesthetic body horror, but it also stands in for the way in which Elizabeth feels kind of implanted by things out of her control. Would you talk a little bit about this sort of bodily interaction with food and foreign bodies?
Yes, I think part of that also comes with my fascination in sort of the superficial beauty and then kind of what's going on under. So, and the beautiful fig looks amazing and delicious on the outside, but inside it has this something inside of it.
They notably have so much wasp carcae in them and eggs and things.
Yes, there is some. I know what you mean. I feel like I read about that after the fact. Like there's part of their seed that is somehow related to gets pollinated, or that's the wrong word, but by is it bees? I can't remember. I'd have
I
to
think
go.
it's wasps, yeah.
Yeah. Yes, that's really interesting because bees also are somewhere else in the novel at various times as
Yeah,
well.
yeah.
It's just, and again, it's sort of like a mirror to sort of a creeping dread and sort of a way to build some atmospheric tension, I suppose, as well.
Yeah, and it builds tension and also really again sort of alerts us to the fact that Elizabeth doesn't quite know how to be in her body, and she understands herself as something that can be looked at and perceived and then at times, almost kind of sort of floats outside of her body as though it's separate from her, and then has these moments where she's so in it as she's coughing up the bug, and then the moment in the bath where she's sort of finding something with inside of her. That's a really crazy and really vividly done scene. But it called to mind the sense of how uncomfortable she is in her body.
Right. Because there is this sort of punitive aspect to it. Every time you sort of think she's on the precipice enjoying something, I sort of take that away from her cruelly.
Not kind to your protagonist, Courtney.
No.
The business of acquiring works of art for museums does not come through in a pristine way in the Nude. Indeed, it feels like a dirty business of theft, vulture, capitalism, and deception. For me, it felt as though Elizabeth's physical and emotional disorientation was a response, in a way, to the rot in the business to which she had given over so much of her idealism and brilliance. Can you talk a little bit about the industry behind acquisitions and also how Elizabeth's very body seems to be a response to its airings?
Yeah. I believe that I I was interested in a couple of things here. I think one is sort of the idea for being complicit in it. And I
Yeah.
think maybe there's a certain reader again who might not like that. I didn't want to be didactic. I just wanted to ask questions that I had along the way about why the business runs the way that it does. And I think as it pertains to her body, that's really interesting to think about the ways in which it is actively harming her physio, not only on a psychological, but physiological level as well, where she knows, yes, there's rot in here, but where is it coming from? And what's her part in it as well?
Yeah, and her relationship to William is a fascinating one, and one that is both this sort of like mentor like relationship, but also one of kind of rot and awareness that there's something, rotten in the state of Denmark. How did William come to you as a very complicated and important figure in Elizabeth's story?
Yes, I think it's some more of that the sort of obsession I have with these unneat sort of doublings of figures. I think you could say that he's a stand-in for maybe several other men in the book, but it's also just an accumulation of a lifetime being treated in certain ways as a woman, especially in like the upper echelon of museum directorship is still overwhelmingly male. Even though there are a lot of women that work in the sectors of museums and a lot of women in art history and curation.
I
So
remember someone, a Williams grad, telling me that there's a Williams mafia of all these men who graduated with art history degrees from Williams who are now in charge of all these things.
oh wow, I'll have to look into that. And yes, I was sort of thinking about like a nesting doll of patriarchal paradigms, I suppose. And thinking of these smaller contained, yeah, I guess, yeah, paradigms. Like in the office is one such paradigm. And unfortunately, William is an amalgamation of probably several bosses that I've had over the years.
Oh, no.
Maybe just turn it up to an extreme amount. But I mean, he never does anything that is so out of the realm of possibility, I suppose.
This episode is brought to you by Nespresso Virtuo Coffee Machines. Ready to enjoy the bold flavors of barista quality Nespresso iced coffee at home? Simply fill a glass with ice and press the brew button on your Virtuo Pop machine to enjoy rich double espressos roasted to stand up even when chilled. Refreshingly bold iced coffee. Refreshingly easy to make at home. Visit Nespresso.com to shop now.
My cat Freddie loves to be brushed and cuddled. But stirring up his cat allergens meant sneezing and itchy eyes. Then I found Purina One Live Clear. It's cat food that reduced the major allergen and my suffering in as little as 21 days. Now, we feel closer than ever. If you have issues with cat allergens, you really need to try Purina One Live Clear.
Try new Purina One Live Clear today. Purina One, a difference from day one.
Yeah, no, it all felt like it could be like par for the course. But at the same time, I'm sad that this is a manifestation of real bosses you've had.
Yeah, and even like friend stories, collating those together and thinking, yeah.
The nude that the fisherman pulls up is really gorgeously described, and the more Elizabeth imagines its creation and source material, the more she understands herself as a kind of figure. The statue begins to very much resonate as a manifestation of that gaze, but also as a power in potentially controlling how one is displayed. Elizabeth says, if I was going to be put on display, I might as well dictate how. Can you discuss that rather Faustian bargain and how the statue helps Elizabeth understand its repercussions?
Right. It's sort of, again, that double bind of the gaze and her, I guess, in an attempt to sort of reclaim that in any small way that she can. She does a lot of projection onto the statue, as well as onto Theo, who I think represents that same sort of idealized, if you will, version where you have a little bit more control in how you are perceived. But
Right.
the statue is, of course, an inanimate object. Uh, so she doesn't quite
It's not that kind of novel. You don't make it a golem.
but yes, there is this sort of personification of the statue at various points, though, which maybe speaks more to where she is mentally. But yes, I think it's again grappling with that dichotomy of seeing and being seen, and how to traverse and navigate those muddy waters.
That's really nicely said. You've got an amazing bit of etymology in the novel that really, took me by surprise and that I love, which is the Greek origins of the term navel gazing. And there's a moment in which Elizabeth says, I peered down at myself and tried to focus on what I was, a figure, a vessel, a navel. And I just thought you did such great work with thinking through, one, the Greek monks who would have been staring at their navel, trying to have a kind of, I don't know, an aesthetic experience of spirituality, but also what does it mean to kind of, stare at ourselves in this way, whether it's, true navel gazing or some other kind of gazing at the self. Do you want to talk about that etymology and where you found it, and then also the work it does for you here?
Yeah. So often it's really just thinking through, pinpointing those little moments and thinking on how I can expand them. And then I don't have a vivid recollection of where I found that particular piece of information, but I just remember writing that scene and thinking, this is so navel gazing. And then and then thinking, I think that's sort of a gendered sort of pejorative to throw at female writing. I see it more in memoir, probably.
Oh, yeah.
And
for sure.
yeah. And Elizabeth is myopic and cerebral, and as we've said, has blind spots and is really in so many ways unable to get around herself. So I sort of just wanted to press on that bruise a little bit.
I like
And
that. I like that press on the bruise, but go ahead. Sorry, I interrupted you.
No, that's really it. Just take her down into that thought process of what that really means, and also if it really is a negative. I don't know. For her at some points, yes, as she does get in the way of her own self. And at other points, I think her ability to think deeply about things is her own power as well.
Yeah, I kind of think about navel gazing in the same terms that I think about guilty pleasures. That it's we're overlaying this sort of guilt about deep thinking about something that maybe the society thinks we shouldn't spend time on, and that if we can kind of unlayer it, that in fact it can be this real gift. And certainly Elizabeth's interiority is one of her great gifts, and it requires navel gazing.
Right. Yeah, I agree.
I almost said novel gazing, but that would have been fun too.
But
Before I let you go, Courtney, I would love to hear what you've been reading and loving recently, and if you have some things you'd like to recommend to the listeners of the show.
yes, I would love to. Thank you. I just picked up Joanna Novak's newest poetry collection. It's called, I don't know if I'm saying it correctly, it's a portmanteau, but it's called Domesticia. It's about the domestic and home and food and belonging. I really am a fan of her work. There's another book
I love that
I
title.
yeah. There's another book I recently came across. It's called Die, My Love. I think it came out in 2018. Ariana Harwicks. She's an Argentinian author, and it's this sort of disruptive, caustic woman in the early throes of motherhood, which is terrain that has been explored, or it seems to be sort of, wifehood and motherhood seems to be pretty popular in literature right now. Not that it always wasn't.
No, but you're right. We're having a mother moment. I mean, I just interviewed Chelsea Beaker and her Mad Woman book that's coming out next week or the week after that. I mean, it's just part of a series of amazing books like School for Good Mothers and Night Bitch and that are doing motherhood in amazing ways.
Yes, yeah, I agree. This one is a little bit like Clarice Lispector, a little bit maybe Wolf.
Oh,
Very good so
fantastic.
far, though. And then also for anyone interested in like more of the art, psychosexual, strange dynamics, Naked Portrait, which is a memoir by Lucian Freud's daughter, is
Mm.
really fascinating. I saw his work,
Tell me the title again.
Naked Portrait.
Naked Portrait. Okay.
Yeah. It's a memoir of her confronting what it meant to be the subject of some of her father's naked portraiture.
Mm.
And it's just a really fresh, complicated take, both on what it would be like to be the daughter of a brilliant artist, but also kind of on cancel culture. It's really interesting so far.
Wow, it sounds like really amazing and
Yes.
it's something I want to absolutely get. These are great recommendations. Thank you so much. And I haven't read any of them, which is really fun. So you've given me a good reading list. But I just was really blown away by The Nude. And I want to recommend to my listeners C. Michelle Lindley's The Nude. It's a debut that does not feel like a debut. It is completely under your control in the writing of it. It's so beautiful to read. It has a vision and an understanding of the world that I just really loved diving into. And I'm so glad we got to talk about it.
Thank you so much. This has been wonderful.
Yeah, thank you. Well, that's all for me for now. My thanks to C. Michelle Lindley for coming on to talk about her wonderful debut novel, The Nude. You can find links to purchase The Nude and all of C. Michelle's recommended novels at the website, burnedbybooks.com. There you'll find all of our previous episodes, links to buy a podcast t-shirt, and ways to get in contact. As you listen, take a moment to rate the show on iTunes, Spotify, or wherever you find your podcasts. Until next time, this has been Burned by Books.